Bojack Horseman is a show that is hard to describe in a single sentence. It means a lot to a lot of different people, and for a lot of different reasons. The 5 protagonists all face their own challenges and forge their own path in life. The show has been described as a tale of broken people trying to be good and find their place in the world, and I'd agree with that perception. But the trials and tribulations of Bojack garner the most attention. One reason that the show has such mainstream success is the relatability of its titular character, and the issues that plague Bojack are issues that a surprising number of people face in the society that we live in. Mainly, the struggle to live a happy and meaningful life. Bojack sums up the conundrum that many face in the first episode to Diane, when he tells her, "I can't even be responsible for my own breakfast. How can I be responsible for my own happiness?" This guy has all the money and potential in the world, and if he can't be happy, what chance do the rest of us have? A lot of people fall at the same hurdle as Bojack. In the age when opportunities are more accessible than any other time in history, and when education is so easily accessible, the lack of success and happiness that our generation is drowning in seems a contradiction. One of the ways in which people reach out when they struggle is the internet, and many people, myself included, stumble onto the lectures of Jordan Peterson. But how does the lectures of a Canadian psychologist connect to the struggles of the modern day man and Bojack Horseman? Well, you'll have to watch to find out. All of Bojack's problems stem from a single source: himself, his narcissism, self-destructive behaviour and selfishness. Bojack has no meaning in life. He has no reason to get out of bed in the morning. Even when he gets what he thinks he wants, it's never enough. When he lands his dream job playing secretariat, it doesn't fill the void in his life. Bojack fills his life full of materialistic objects and goals. He drinks to feel things and constantly pushes those that love him away. But how does he break this cycle? How does he take that long road from the pilot to saying goodbye to everyone in the finale? Well, strangely enough, Bojack's path to redemption mirrors the advice Jordan Peterson gives to those that listen to him desperate to find meaning in their lives. One of the issues that Peterson critiques in today's society is our approach to self-esteem. Put yourself in this situation. A friend comes to you and is self-conscious about their weight. What do? You'd probably reassure them and tell them that they are fine as they are and not to worry. And society backs this stance. Your actions would be motivated by kindness, but these actions are not kind in the long term. Peterson instead advises to take a long look at yourself and find out what your faults are, and do something to correct them, to become a better person and to grow. In the case of your friend, to encourage them and to help them to eat better and to exercise, so they can lose this weight rather than just feeling bad about having it. They have the potential to be amazing. Why settle for who they are now? In the earlier series, Bojack ignores his own faults and chooses to instead decide that they don't matter, because in his own mind he is a good person. The clearest example of this is when he pleads to Diane at her conference to tell him that he is a good person. He lays out his faults and the fact that he is narcissistic, self-destructive and selfish. But he needs her to tell him that none of this matters. But of course it does. Of course it matters. In later series, Todd confronts Bojack about his behaviour, telling him that just because he feels shitty after doing bad things doesn't excuse what he does. Bojack leans in the crutch of the pressure he is under and his alcoholism, but Todd doesn't accept these excuses. Everything bad you do is because of you and your choices, he tells him. Not your childhood, not your issues, but you and your choices. It might seem a bit harsh, but Bojack being forced to accept his faults is one of the reasons that he goes to rehab and begins his recovery. In order to become better people, we have to understand our shortcomings and to work to overcome them. We can't blindly feed our self-esteem. Across the Western world, there's been a crisis facing our generation that has been more pronounced over the last 5 years, and that problem is the lack of meaning in people's lives. From a sociological perspective, this has major impacts, driving up mental health issues and having damaging effects on the economies and cultures of the world alike. The cause is not so apparent, but the effect is very clear. Bojack is a clear representation of this issue faced by many of our generation. Throughout the series, Bojack feeds his ego and narcissism with objects and achievements based on materialistic values. In season 1, he wants to have his book written as a grand return to Hollywood, but he's only willing to show the sides of himself that he wants people to see to improve their perspectives on him. When Diane writes an objective truth about his life, he doesn't take it well, because it didn't garner the reaction that he had hoped. Even when he gets his dream role of playing Secretariat, he is still unsatisfied. This mentality plagues our generation. We often aim for meaningless goals, such as likes on Instagram, or to have the latest clothes or phone, but we are never satisfied. In Peterson's book, he teaches the reader to pursue in life what is meaningful, not what is expedient. In other words, do what gives you a real sense of purpose or achievement, what makes you want to get out of bed in the morning. Bojack meanders around throughout the series until he finds something he has a real passion for, his sister Hollyhock. For the first time in his life, he's a familiar connection that isn't toxic, and someone in his life that he can forge a future with. This relationship even leads to him discovering something he's a real passion for in life, teaching. This is a far cry from the Bojack from earlier series. Here, he is actually having a positive impact on people, and is the happiest that he's ever been, even if it doesn't last that long. Pursuing what is meaningful can clearly turn your life around, as it did for Bojack. The final of Peterson's teachings that Bojack adopts is that of personal responsibility. Everything in Peterson's books and lectures centres around the challenge of personal responsibility. But what does that actually mean? It means taking responsibility for one's actions in life in a broader sense. In life, we often don't want to appear to be at fault, often blaming contributing factors for our own failures. We didn't do as well in that test because our teacher didn't teach us that topic thoroughly enough. And although I can definitely relate to that, having one of the worst teachers ever for one of my A levels, we cannot control external forces, only ourselves. Sure, the teacher was shit, so use the internet. Educate yourself. It might be hard and unfair, but we have to take responsibility for our own life and our own success. We can't be truly developed people living fulfilled lives if it's always somebody else's fault. Bojack touches on this in a really profound way in the first episode when he tells Liam that he can't be responsible for his own happiness because he can't even be responsible for his own breakfast. At this stage in his life, Bojack isn't responsible for anything. He lives off his past accomplishments and relies on Todd for companionship and Princess Caroline for literally everything else. A really subtle way that the writers convey this is through Bojack's belongings. After Sarah Lynn's house party damages Bojack's apartment, he just leaves it damaged. After he crashes his car, he doesn't repair it. Even his bed stays broke for a whole season until Wanda begs him to fix it. This horse isn't responsible for anything, and least of all, his own happiness. Bojack does a lot of shitty things throughout the show, like a crazy amount of shitty things. But he never fails to find a cause for his behaviour other than himself, something else to blame it on. This all catches up to him when Todd confronts him and tells him that all the bad stuff he does isn't because of his trauma, the pressure he's under, or his alcoholism, it's because of himself. He has to take responsibility for his own actions. As the people in his life slowly drift away from him, Bojack is forced to take responsibility for himself. And he doesn't have the crutch of Princess Caroline to sort it out, or Diane to listen to his woes. But one choice marks Bojack's biggest change, and he decides to take personal responsibility. When the journalists ring him up and threaten to expose his dark past with Sarah Lynn, Bojack decides to face the consequences of his past and take responsibility for his actions, even after PC's offer to try and stop them. This is Bojack's biggest change. He gives up everything because he knows that it's the right thing to do, to face what he has done. We can't move forward in life without taking responsibility for ourselves and our own happiness. Bojack shows us the harsh reality of life, that you can't skip the bad parts. I could speak for hours about the perfection of the finale, the tragic awkwardness of Bojack's and Diane's final conversation, or the profound wisdom of Todd's speech about the hokey pokey, and someday I might. But what I took from Bojack's ending is that it is possible to evolve and move forward, regardless of the hand that life deals you, and Peterson's teachings are certainly one way to do that. It shows us that in a harsh world, it's difficult to try and be a good person. You can fall into patterns and routines, and sometimes it can feel impossible to be happy. Being responsible for your own happiness is a cruel contradiction, but it gets easier. Every day it gets a little easier, but you gotta do it every day. That's the hard part, but it does get easier. If Bojack can escape from a pit of meaningless void, we all can. Bojack Horseman gives hope to us all.